Welcome to the All Out Leadership Podcast, hosted by Pastor Eric Lawson, where each episode is uniquely designed to help you live all out by bringing you practical leadership from a biblical perspective delivered in 10 minutes or less. So whether you're a business leader, serving in ministry, or simply looking to grow in your leadership, this podcast is for you. Before we dive into this week's topic, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and download the show notes at ericlawson.com/podcast. And while you're at it, feel free to share the content on social media. Now, let's join Pastor Eric for this week's conversation.
The word greatness, we hear it all the time inside of our culture. It's something that really everyone wants to attain. The challenge we have is, what is greatness? What is really the definition of lasting greatness? You know, a lot of people go, oh, it's IQ. Well, the problem with IQ is it's more or less fixed. You're born with a certain capacity for IQ. So if greatness is only attached to something you're born with, there's some people we've all met, let's be honest, can never be great if it's simply attached to an IQ. You know, some people think it's charisma. Oh, that person's so dynamic to be around. Well, you know, there's a lot of tyrants in history that were charismatic, but histories define them as not so great in terms of their impact. Jesus really defines for us what is great, what is lasting greatness, what is eternal greatness inside of his economy and his kingdom, because so many people are pursuing greatness based on a wrong definition. And even if you hit it, it didn't matter because it was still wrong. So we should let Jesus, our creator, be the one who defines what greatness is. And fortunately, he does that, and he even gives us simple steps on how to achieve it. And that's what we're going to look at over the next couple lessons together. I want to take you into a dialogue between Jesus and his disciples. It's found in Mark chapter 9, verse 30. Then he departed from there and passed through Galilee, for he taught his disciples and said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And after he is killed, he will rise again the third day." But they did not understand this and were afraid to ask him. Then he came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What was it you disputed among yourselves on the road?" But they kept silent on the road, for they had disputed among themselves who would be the greatest. All right, so let's just kind of put this into context. Jesus makes a pretty big, heavy staff meeting statement, gets his executive team together, he puts his leaders together, and he goes, "All right, guys, hey, just FYI, I want to let you know, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to be killed." Now, fortunately, Jesus didn't just end there. He followed through with the most important part of that statement, which was this last half, and "I'm going to rise from the dead." They didn't hear that part, and very often as staff, as we're following our leaders, it's very important that we listen to the whole of what they say. Too often, I have staff over the years who have only heard the first thing I said, not the last thing I said. "Hey guys, we're going to go do this project." And here's what they heard. "Oh, work. That's a lot of work." But what they didn't hear is the resurrection on the other side of it. And you know what? These lives are going to be changed. And here's how it's going to make a difference in our culture. Here's how it's going to make a difference in our community. It's very important that we have the right ears when we're listening to our leaders. The disciples got it wrong because they didn't hear everything in the context of what Jesus was saying. You'll hear this statement often. Jesus always says, "Be careful how you hear." Not just what you hear, but be careful how you hear. Now, they take this as an opportunity to start jockeying for who's the right one to take the CEO's job, who's going to get that president's chair. And so they're arguing over who's the most qualified to take over the boss's job when the boss retires, when the boss leaves. And what we see is this: Jesus talks about crosses before he talks about crowns. A great leader isn't somebody who's fighting for a crown. A great leader is someone who's willing to carry a cross. And that's what we see with Jesus. He didn't come to the earth to talk about his rights, to talk about his authority, to talk about his power. He came ultimately to carry a cross. Now, he knew on the other side of that cross, there would be a crown. We know in Hebrews chapter 12, it says, "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross." We have to have the joy on the other side of the crosses we carry. But great leaders carry crosses before they carry crowns. So the question is, as a leader, what crosses do you need to carry? What are the crosses we should be carrying as leaders. Really, a cross in its best definition is this: it just simply means to die to yourself. A lot of people will go, "Oh, I got this cross and I'm carrying." And really, it's not a cross they're carrying. It might be a thorn in the flesh that they're carrying. See, a cross is something you choose to pick up. There's problems you have in your life, irritations you have in your life. You didn't get to choose it. Well, that's not necessarily a cross. Jesus chose to go to the cross. Jesus says, "No man takes my life, I lay my life down." And so Jesus willingly picked up a cross. As a leader, there are times that we willingly choose, I'm going to die to myself, my rights, my reputation, because I'm going to put the needs of others above myself. That's what makes leaders great. I love the statement from the Air Force, and it's the PJs. They're just the elite. They're like the Navy SEALs of the Air Force. They're the para Rangers, and they jump behind the scenes as medics. They jump back into the battle. They parachute on down, and they help evacuate people in the heat of battle. Like these are just the ultimate studs. And I love their motto. It's this: these things we do that others might live. Now, when you hear that statement, you go, "Oh, wow, that is great." Truly, when we look at the people in history we respect and admire the most, were all people who were willing to carry a cross, people who died to themselves for the needs and the benefits of others. William Wallace, we love the movie Braveheart, and we love his story. Why? Because he was willing to die for something greater than himself, and that was for his country's freedom. Joan of Arc and those that are willing to die martyr's death for a greater cause, we respect them ultimately. And there's a lot of people who might be great in terms of the car they drive, the house they live in, and the status they have and the likes they have on Facebook. But when they come and go, the sands of time will ultimately wash away their influence because they didn't really do something other than live for themselves. Greatness is not what you do for yourself. Greatness is not even what you get others to do for you. Greatness is ultimately when you pick up a cross to die to yourself so that you can serve and make others' lives better. So, CEO, how are you laying down your life, your want, and even your rights to really think of, how am I helping my employees' lives be better? How am I helping my customers' lives better? And I like what Zig Ziglar said. He said this: if we will help enough people get what they want, ultimately we will get what we want. So the first thing that we see in a great leader is they're willing to die to themselves so that others truly might live. Now, we're going to pick up with this next week because Jesus gives some very practical steps and definitions of what it means to truly be great.
Thank you for joining us on the All Out Leadership Podcast. We hope you gained new biblical insight that challenged you to grow in your leadership. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we would love your help in getting the content out farther. You can help by subscribing to the podcast at ericlawson.com/podcast and telling others about it. Next week, Pastor Eric will be back with another episode. So until then, we hope you have a great week being an all-out leader.